Hello there! Welcome to episode 5 of the Red Shark Interview Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the people, the stories, and the tech shaping the creative industries. I'm your host, Chris Wells, and today I'm having a conversation with Stephen Yee, founder and executive producer at Wood Island Media. Stephen's worked with some of the biggest celebrity brands out there, from Kourtney Kardashian's Poosh to Chrissy Teigen's Cravings, and even projects for LeBron James and GQ. In this chat, we talk about the realities of freelancing with some fantastic advice on handling client expectations, as well as how to tell a good story in a 15-second reel. By the latter half of the chat, I kind of just let my film nerddom excitement bubble over and I just start blabbing about films. Though I do think it's important and interesting how we carry that inspiration across our work. This was recorded online just a few days ago, and a little bit of a forewarning, I do get very excitable as this episode goes on, as I realise quite how much I have in common with Steve. But without further delay, let's hop to it. Thank you so much for coming on, Steve. And for the audience at home, I was just wondering if you could give us a little intro as to who you are and what you do, so we could just understand who's this beautiful man I'm talking to right now.
Thanks for having me, Chris. So I am Stephen Yee. I am the founder and executive producer of Wood Island Media, a full-service production company specializing in celebrity branded social content.
Fantastic. And so I want to kind of, for the audience time, I want us to take everyone back in time now and I want to kind of follow your journey. I hate that term. I'm so sorry.
Sure. So I grew up in Boston, where there's not much of a creative scene, but I have always loved movies. I grew up as the only child. So my dad took me to the movies like every week, and I was an early adopter of Netflix, like the mail-in DVDs. So by the time like I was 12 years old, I was just plowing through all the classics. I was very well versed in Scorsese, Hitchcock, Kubrick. So I was the president of my film club, but growing up in Boston, you never thought that film would be a viable career path, So I went to college for business school, majoring in marketing. But as soon as I took like my first film class, because I always intended to like at least minor in it, as soon as I took my first film class, I was like, this is it. It just felt so natural. It was so much fun, like just creating films, like pulling stuff from my head and putting it onto screen. I also have like a random story in college. I saw that you're a David Lynch fan, right?
Yeah, he's my hero.
Rest in peace. So one of the greats.
Yeah.
So I was getting into David Lynch in college, and I had one of my roommates who's not a cinephile watch Eraserhead with me. And at the end of the movie, he was just silent for like 10 seconds. And then he stood up, goes, I hate this movie, and walked out.
That's a pretty understandable reaction, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm a soon to father to be. So I might revisit Eraserhead to prepare myself.
Yeah, you get to feel the feelings. It's Lynch is was trying to explain like 40, 50 years ago. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went and you studied film. You loved film, and so the goal was to become like a filmmaker, was to become a David Lynch and kind of do all that. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So after college, graduated in 2011. Senior year, me and 4 of my friends from my film program moved out to Los Angeles. No job prospects or anything. And around that time, this is when the digital revolution was happening. People were shooting on DSLRs. You were getting like very solid images coming from sub $1,000 equipment. And also at the same time, Google bought out YouTube, and they were pouring like $100 million into creating premium content. And my first job coming out of college was working for one of those channels, Dance On. And I got to shoot, edit, just be super hands-on with the production process rather than going like the traditional PA route.
When you go into a company like that, what was it, a case of like you were just like the camera jockey, go make the videos, or did it have that kind of content creator kind of era of just like, what do you want to do? Let's just try this. Do you know what I mean? Like what kind of...
So we had a weekly news show that I worked on, and we had a lot of creative freedom, so I got to experiment with the look and feel of the show. They had like an established template, but I was free to constantly evolve it to my liking.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, we would do like some dance series with dancers. I remember this one series where it was like combining dancers with like elements, so like Pop and Locker was like water, and got to shoot an interview and shoot his dance and kind of really shape the look and feel of that series because again, they didn't really have a vision in mind for it. They're like, hey, this is like a loose concept that we have. Go execute this.
Yeah, and dance is like a very difficult and complicated thing to film compared to like a lot of dialogue that you can't just keep the camera still, you can't just lock it and film it, you have to kind of capture the energy. And it's a thing I always find fascinating, the way people capture dance, because it is
100%.
yeah. So you're working at Dance On, and then kind of what happens from there?
So I worked at Dance On for about a year, and then I moved on to another YouTube channel where I came on as like a freelancer. So that was like my first foray into freelancing, and I started building my client list from there. And then just over the years, just building it up. And in 2015, it got to the point where I started my own company, Wood Island Media, in 2015. And then I worked under another company called Ware Rock Industries, where they had all the celebrity apps, the Kardashian apps, Zendaya, Tyler the Creator. And then a few years after that, I left Ware Rock Industries and was able to leverage my work there and basically go after and create like my own client list off of that work. So I started working with Chrissy Teigen's Cravings brand, Kourtney Kardashian's Poosh brand, LeBron James's Spring Hill and GQ.
Yeah, and that was all under Wood Island at that point.
Correct.
So just let me get my head around the timescale here. So you're at Dance, you moved out of Boston. You're going to do this. You're filming stuff for Dance On. You do start doing a bit of freelance. Like how do you go? Like how long is the time period from I'm filming dancing to I'm filming Zendaya?
Dance On, I started at 2012, and then I started freelancing 2013, and then I was working on the Kardashian and Zendaya apps around 2016, 2017.
Wow. So like yeah, and like was that just from building up like good word of mouth, like delivering quality kind of videos in the end of it, and
Absolutely. And relationships that you build throughout the years.
yeah, definitely. And like so comparatively, like what is it like? And I imagine this varies from celebrity from talent to talent, however we want to call it. But like how much of once again like a kind of content creator idea of like, oh, what should we do today? Let's try something new. Or is it, versus like I can imagine the Kardashians are very planned, like like meetings, planning, thinking everything through.
100%.
Was there anyone that wasn't like that, where it was very much a case of like, oh, what should we do? Let's try something new.
Zendaya was very much like that. She's still like technically like a teenager at that
Yeah.
point or end of her teenage years. So everything was very loose and free. So it's like if she has an idea on set or if we have an idea on set, it's like, let's just go with it.
So this is something that I've always been very interested in, and like I think for the audience at home as well. So like, what could you walk us through your exact process of like, okay, Zendaya comes up to you, Tyler the Creator comes up to you, like Courts to Wood Island Media. Yeah. So if they come up to you, what's the kind of thing that is like, we've got a campaign, we want this many videos, like what? So like, I want to get into the real detail for the kind of nerds like me that are like, how does this work? How does, how do you plan all this out?
Absolutely. So it starts with vision, timeline, and budget. And it's all about balancing those three things in harmony. The vision speaks to the timeline, speaks to the budget, and all three of them have to play very nicely together. With the vision, I always ask for references. Send me videos that you like, that you want this video to look like, to feel like. We try and really hammer out the tone that we're trying to hit. And then go into the deliverables. It's like 160-second with a 30-second cut down, 15-second cut down in 9x16, 16x9, 4x5. And then after that, the timeline. They'll give us like a target delivery date, and then we can work backwards on milestone dates. And then with the budget, so I usually like to ask for clients' budget ranges to start off because I've had experiences in the past where a client will come to me and be like, hey, we want a quote for this, this, and this, and we just want to see what you come to us with. And then I'll give them like a standard budget priced out to, and it was like $50,000. And then they come back to me and be like, oh, they get sticker shock and they're like, oh, we were originally intending to spend $10,000. And
Yeah.
then we end up not working together when instead they could have told me, hey, we have $10,000 to work with. Can you deliver on
Yeah.
this? And we would have been able to scale up or scale down to suit their needs.
Yeah, that feels like the freelance folly, isn't it? It's always such a
Mhm.
difficult thing because people, especially in the creative industry, nobody like people that aren't creative have no idea how much anything costs or to do. So, is it like, are you very much like if a client writes in now, you are very much like tell us the pricing scale like that you are willing to pay to kind of achieve that? Is that the
Mhm.
kind of and do you have any other? I kind of feel like this is a good opportunity. Actually, do you have any advice for any freelance creatives on how to deal with that side of clients, like especially in those opening moments, like with budgeting, with kind of vision, especially? Is there any kind of specific things that you found have worked or maybe not have worked?
It honestly just comes with experience. You know, you really have to find that what works for you. And it's just a lot of trial and error. Like
Yeah,
after so many experiences like that, where the client is like, oh, we don't have budget, but they always have a number in mind. They always
yeah,
do. And it's just, you have to stand firm to be like, hey, you can use the words specifically or the phrase that I like to say, like we can scale up or down to suit your needs. So just looking for ballpark range, and we can work within those parameters.
yeah. That's an awesome. I like that. I'm gonna take that in life. That's a scale up or down. That's beautiful. That is. I enjoy that. Is there any red flags you have in those kinds of conversations? Maybe past the budgeting, and you're talking about vision now. Are there any red flags where you're like, oh no, this is gonna. If I don't nip this in the bud now, it's going to get way worse down the line. Is there any
Oh,
kind of thing experience you've had with that?
absolutely. It's when the client has no idea what they want. And when you're trying, and it is your job to figure out what it is that they want. But when there's a lot of inconsistencies, and you can tell in the
Yeah,
pre-production process, and there's like conflicting ideas, um, where they'll come at you with one thing, with one idea, like the overall idea, and then throw at you something completely different, like 2 weeks later. You know, that's when
right.
you know that it's probably not going to go too well in the post
Yeah.
production
And
process.
how do you deal with those scenarios?
It's really trying to align on the creative vision and really having a good script and storyboard and getting approvals all along the pre-production process and really asking clear questions. Like a lot of times clients will not know what they want, you know? So again, like I said, it's your job to figure out what it is that they want. So they'll be like, they'll send you a reference video and be like, I like this. Very broad, right? So
Yeah,
you're like,
right.
okay, what do you like about this? Do you like the music? Do you like the look of this? Do you like the feel of this? Is there a certain shot that you connect with? You know,
Yeah,
uh, it will come to a time where it's like it's time to approve the script and a time to approve the storyboard, and then okay, this is approved, and then once you get into production or post production, you can always point back to the storyboards and be like, hey, this is
yes.
the vision that we aligned on. Why are we straying away from this?
Yeah.
I've had instances like this where it's happened because a lot of times you'll have a client where there are multiple voices and multiple too many chefs in the kitchen, you know,
Yeah.
the common saying, and you can tell that they're not even aligned on their end. And even though we had an approved storyboard, we'll go in and we'll deliver a V1 that's exactly like the storyboard, and they'll go, "Oh, this isn't what we're looking for." And then they came back to us and gave us their own revised storyboard, which we re-executed, and then they still said, "Hey, this is not what we're looking for." And at that point, you have to realize, yeah, and yet at that point, you have to realize it's not just you, you know, there's an internal issue on their end, and you did everything you could in your power to try and make this go as smoothly as possible. Like you're going to
Yeah.
run into that, and it's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, that makes me feel very good because, like, especially when, like I said, you read your client list, you read like the way, and it's like and it's amazing. You've done amazing work, and it's like
Thank you.
glad to know that those problems are still there. Like, when it's like, oh, I didn't ask for this. And it's like, yes, you did. I've got the email right here. Like, and that's the thing. You become like paranoid about those, like the proof of what someone said. Like that was the easiest lesson I learned when I was younger, was like, get it in writing. Everything that you agree on in writing. A phone call is one thing, but like writing. So how has your perspective on storytelling evolved? Obviously you started, I want to make films, I want to, go into this, and then fast forward years later, and now you're running this amazing business, and like you're working with all these brilliant people and delivering some fantastic things. Like, what would you say to yourself, all those years ago, just about to leave Boston?
I've always valued myself to be a versatile filmmaker. We can get real nerdy over here. Like one of my favorite filmmakers of all time is Stanley Kubrick, and he is one of the most versatile filmmakers of all time.
Yeah.
The same guy made Doctor Strangelove and The Shining,
Yeah.
So storytelling comes in many different forms, especially now with social media. One of my first lessons that was drilled into me was from my college professor, who put storytelling above everything else. That's always stuck with me, and narrative is just structured storytelling, whether that's 60 seconds, 2 minutes, or 2 hours. So for example, like in terms of content, someone can make like the most visually stunning piece of content, but if there's no emotionality or storytelling behind it, it really doesn't matter. It just is a cool looking piece of content.
Yeah.
But if you have something that was made on like zero budget, but tells like a complete story that people connect with, that type of content always resonates with people, connects with people, and perform the best.
Yeah. And what do you think? What do you think? Like, because I have my own answer for this, but I'd be really interested in what you think of. Like, what do you think that is, that you can tell when someone puts their voice into it, when someone cares? You can hear it in music, you can see it in art, you can tell when someone has actually put a bit of themselves into what they're making. And like sometimes you can listen to music, like, oh, this person didn't care. It's the problem that I have, especially with all generative AI art. Like you can tell that nobody cared like enough to make it. They never kind of did that. And I was just wondering what your perspective is on that with the Wood Island Media kind of stuff, because like even in that you can tell that, like, you can tell that Chrissy Teigen definitely was involved in that, even though a cynic could be like, oh well, they're just celebrities, they have a publicist, they tell you to do one thing and they do it. It's like, no, you can tell when somebody is like cares about what they're making. And I was just interested in your opinion on that.
I 100% agree. It's the shared human experience that you can connect with. As opposed to AI, it doesn't have like those years of highs and lows, the happiness, the joy, the trauma that leads you and builds who you are today. And for people to intentionally create art and use their uh, past experiences and convey a piece of themselves into that art, you can always tell that always wins out.
Yeah. And how do you get that out of your clients in a case of like, I can imagine that, well, they must have publicists and they must have people that want one thing. If you let just the publicist do what their idea of Zendaya is or their idea of this celebrity is, it'd probably be very different to something that had a bit of, the kind of Zendaya, a bit of Tyler the Creator in it. Like, how do you make that work?
It really depends on the client. We can use Chrissy Teigen as an example, whom you brought up. She has a very strong brand identity and voice. She's incredibly easy to work with because of that. When you think Chrissy Teigen, you think very outspoken, very authentic, very honest. So, for example, a brand will approach Chrissy and then have a script, and then we'll review the script and be like, she wouldn't say that. So we'll go back to the brand and be like, what are you trying to accomplish with this line? Okay. So we'll put that in Chrissy's words, how she would say it, how she would deliver it.
I just imagine like, well, how are the publicists okay with this? They were like, no, you're going to do our script and you're going to do it now. I like, how do those conversations, are they normally, if you approach it in that way, they're like, yes, okay, that's fine? Or is there kind of, almost a way you have to manage them, almost like let that creative spirit kind of run through?
Sorry, the publicist from like the client side or like Chrissy's side?
I suppose either. Like you said, too many cooks. Like, how do you align all of those cooks so there is no, like, because I imagine, like you said, if there are many cooks, there are publicists and other people that want one thing, one brand wants one thing, but then it just does not align with, like we said, Chrissy Teigen. how do you navigate those conversations without someone going, well, I want it this way and you're doing it this way?
A lot of times the talent will just speak up and be like, no, we're
Yeah.
just going to say it this way. Yeah. They'll have final say and be like, I'm not saying that. Or, let's try it this way, you know?
Yeah.
They'll usually step in.
Yeah, that's one of those situations where I'm like, that's the obvious answer. That's the thing I thought happened, but you never know, I just want to see, I want to get, not necessarily dirt, but just understanding kind of that, those kinds of conflicts that can happen when, like you said, there's so many cooks kind of delivering something, which
Yeah.
is even more complicated when the ultimate deliverable might be a 1 minute short.
I mean, a lot of the times the publicist is there to play the bad guy, you know?
Yeah.
Um, they are already so familiar with the talent's brand and image and the things that they want to talk about and the things that they can't talk about. So if an interviewer asks the talent a certain question, the publicist will often step in and be like, no,
Yeah,
we got to move on. That way the talent still
that makes
looks,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. So in this world now where you've done so many amazing things, what kind of job gets you excited now? What's like the kind of dream? What, like, tomorrow you get a phone call and it's the dream phone call, you get the dream email. What would that be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I can tell you about like a really fun project we did in recent years.
Yeah.
It was the Benny Drama and Poosh collaboration,
Mm.
where so Poosh is Kourtney Kardashian's brand, and Benny Drama is like an internet comedian. He's famous for doing impressions of the Kardashians. So he would play a fictionalized version of Kourtney, or a parody of Kourtney Kardashian, and in the vein of American Psycho. So that was super fun to collaborate on. And so this comes with managing client expectations or specific strategies, you know. So this was unlike anything that Poosh had ever done before, and it wasn't like completely in line with their brand. So when we were given the script, or when we were scripting this out, I wanted to make sure that, hey, is this the tone that you guys are going for? We want to play this super serious and super straight, and the comedy comes in with the
Yeah.
ludicrousness of the scenarios. And they're like, oh yeah, that's what we're going for. So that way everyone's aligned, everyone knows exactly how this is going to look and feel when we deliver like V1, you know. And that's exactly what happened. We delivered V1 and they loved it. Had barely any notes, and we were done with probably by V2 or V3.
Wow, that's the dream, isn't it? When you kind of have something, especially when you take a big swing like that. I actually watched that one, and that one was funny. I had no idea who anyone was, but it was, I got the references, and I was like, and it did feel, a daring. It did feel like, oh, this isn't what I expected from,
Mhm.
especially compared to their other stuff. But that's almost
Exactly.
like that spark, that creative thing. Was that in your vision? Did you, like, in the vision board, go American Psycho,
Oh no. So Benny Drama's like a
Benny Drama?
comedic genius. He actually has a new Hulu show coming out, I think, in the next few weeks,
Oh, okay.
called Overcompensating.
Chris from the future here, just did a quick little check, and Overcompensating is in fact coming out on Amazon Prime, not Hulu. And in fact, it will be out by the time this episode is out. So enjoy.
So congrats to him. He was a pleasure to work with. We were tasked to execute this, you know, so all the shots, like we had like the loose idea of certain scenes and just trying to elevate the comedic effect and like really bring this to life.
Yeah, so that was an example of someone coming to you with, like, quite a strong vision, and you're the executor. Do you have any examples of where they come to you and you are the one that brings the kind of big idea that kind of pushes something through?
Yeah, we did like a spot for Segway a bit ago. And we basically had to script everything out and storyboard everything. And that was a long and arduous process to really align everyone. But honestly, not too many fun stories for that one. That was just
Yeah.
shot like during the pandemic. That's it. So just running around downtown with like a skeleton crew. But we have that, and then a lot of ones where they'll come to us that are fun stories, like the one that I mentioned where they blew up the storyboard like twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to go dig deeper into that.
No, I understand that. There's once again the perils of freelancing. So I suppose as well as this, you make. I saw your short film, Dear Mom. Is it Dear Mum? Dear Mom. I
Yep.
always struggle being British. I'm like Mum, but it's Mom. Dear Mom, and I loved it. It was beautiful. And that's a perfect example actually of what we're talking about. For I could tell you really cared about making it before I read any more about like the kind of what brought it to be.
Mhm.
Even anyone that knows nothing about you, nothing about the kind of product, you can feel that this is about. So this is someone that has something to say, and it's very beautiful. It's short. It's available online. I'll put it in our show notes. Actually, I'll put a little link because, like, yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. And I was just wondering, like, how often do you kind of put your time in towards doing personal kind of creative projects?
I get the itch like every couple of years. So that I think we did probably 2, 3 years ago. I'm working on something now.
I was
Don't
going
want
to
to.
say, I bet you're due another itch now. Then, if it's every
Yeah,
couple of years.
exactly. The timing's right. So I don't want to like reveal too much since it's still in the very early stages. But I am very excited about it. I've been thinking about it for the past like year or so, and
Mm,
those are the ideas that really like I will pour myself into, and that
yeah,
are worthwhile. Where you're still thinking about it like for a
yeah.
year or two. Like Dear Mom, that was recorded in 2019, and we scheduled to shoot in April 2020, and of course that's when the pandemic happened.
Yeah, that's not a good
So we had to
time.
shut down production. But like I had been wanting to do it for so long, and then there was like a little pocket of freedom 2 years later, and we're able to get that done, and I'm like super proud and super happy with it.
Honestly, like congratulations on that. I loved it. It was beautiful.
Thank
I
you
feel
so
like
much.
people that grew up in the DSLR age, you become like a gear addict. Like
Yeah,
I knew a lot of people who was like, I need the 5D Mark II. Then it's like, oh, I
yeah.
need this. Or I was like, oh, I get this. Have you one of those people that's kind of evolved past it now, and you're just like, gear's gear. I'll just rent whatever I need. Like,
I still try and keep up every now and then. Like we mainly use Canon C70s for a majority of our productions. For Dear Mom, it was my Mini LF, and so we'll use that when we need to. But I'd say for like 90% of our productions, we'll use our C70s. And when the C80 came out, I was like super pumped, because the C70 was like the perfect camera for that suited all my needs. Like
yeah,
had internal NDs, had XLR output, had great autofocus. So when the C80 came out, it was a little bit of a disappointment. Just it wasn't quite the upgrade that
yeah,
it needed to be to entice me. But in terms of like overall gear, I'm not as in touch with it as I used to be. I used to
yeah,
buy like all the tiny little things that I'm like, this little steady cams. There's like a little jockey, like the
yeah.
4D jockey that I bought this one time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know so many people like that. I got a 550D.
Because I know that's like the British
Oh, sorry, that's
equivalent.
the British. So it's the Rebel T2i, I
That was my
think.
first camera too.
Yeah, Rebel T2i. In fact, I got mine on import from America because it said Rebel T2i on it because it was
Yeah.
cheaper, and that was my university camera.
I remember shooting my senior thesis on the Canon T2i. I
Same,
used like
same.
my summer like earnings, my summer job earnings, and purchased that camera going into
Yeah,
my senior year.
yeah. I got so good with the manual focus with my little finger, like getting those things. Using the Nifty 50, everything was filmed on the Nifty
Yep,
50 with
yep,
me. Yeah, it
exactly.
just that bokeh. Oh man, what a camera! What a time! So, what excites you about the future of digital content, especially since the dance on deck, like the way that YouTube has like changed and evolved, and the way that content has become? Is there anything that you're excited about in the way that things are going, the way that trends are, the kind of requests you're getting at this point?
I mean, I feel like we have to talk about the elephant in the room. That's AI.
Yeah,
It's both exciting and fearful.
yeah,
It simultaneously makes our jobs easier, but also makes our jobs obsolete. But we have utilized a bunch of AI softwares that have made our jobs tremendously easier, and made our clients' lives easier. For example, like we've had videos where our client comes back to us and was like, "Hey, we weren't supposed to say this. Do we have to come in and re-record this whole thing?" And we're like, "No. There's software that we can clone your voice and then basically input the replacement word and just
wow.
dub it in." And we've used that multiple times, and they're like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah. And do you think, I suppose, and this would be interesting from your perspective, in the world of like generative AI, because obviously that is a good example in like what we say, like, it's like ethical use of like things like you have everyone's permission, everything's doing. Like, what's your opinion about the kinds of the slop that comes out of like the generative AI that's like unethically sourced and like seems to create, like, everyone seems to be doing the same things all the time, even in like videos now, and people are talking about like, oh yeah, no, you can make your own films and you can do it and it all looks like this. And like, what's your opinion, like seeing all of that from your side?
I mean, you can tell. Like we talked about this earlier. We touched upon it. Like, there's no emotionality behind it. You know, you can always tell.
Yeah.
There's something off about it, and but I also believe at the same time that we're still in the early stage of this, and this is only going to continue improving. You know, more clients are going to ask for this and request this, because it is the cheaper option. Like, rather than spending tens, hundreds, thousands on CGI, you can just insert a prompt. You know,
Yeah.
so I think it is wise to at least like play around with it, and
Yeah.
just be familiar with it. Because like one of my things is to stay ahead of the curve, just constantly stay curious and constantly experiment. You know,
Yeah.
whatever interests you, definitely try out, push you out of your comfort zone. AI is a big thing right now. Rather than resist it, at least like play around with it, see what it does. But yeah, that's how I feel.
No, fair enough. Are you noticing more already, like clients asking potentially like lower cost but use AI for this sort of situation?
Absolutely, they'll ask for like AI solutions.
Yeah. No, interesting. So, how do you stay ahead of not only the technological but also like the creative trends?
Read Red Shark News.
Thank you. Yes, everyone should definitely follow his advice. He is clearly a smart and successful man, and only the smart and successful read Red Shark News.
Honestly, just watching content and keeping up with what's trending, but also seeing like what's gaining a lot of attention in theaters. You know, you're able to tell like the certain themes that people are resonating with, or consistent themes throughout like multiple movies. You know, movies are a reflection of the current state of culture.
No, that's interesting. Probably coming up towards the end now. So I won't take too much of your time, but I want to get a bit film nerdy with you now. I want to kind of,
Absolutely.
okay, so this is the worst question anyone can ask. If you had to choose the five films in the pot of films that are your favorites or most, not necessarily the most influential on you, like if you had to choose just five, and there will always be more and there'll always be more favorite, but like, what are
Yeah.
the five ones that like influenced you and why?
You're in luck because I just did this with a group of my friends.
Excellent.
One would probably be Princess Bride. I've seen that movie easily over 100 times. It was constantly playing on TNT growing up, and when it was on, I would always watch it in full. It just has a little bit of everything, you
Mm,
know, comedy, action, everything. Princess Bride, American History X, with Edward Norton.
yeah.
I watched that when I was like 13 or 14, and it just always just stuck with me. That was and still is one of the most amazing acting performances I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
And it makes your
Um,
teeth hurt. Just the opening makes your
yes,
teeth.
exactly. 3 and 4, probably Godfather and Shawshank Redemption for similar reasons. They're just enough said, you know.
Yeah, they're a
Um,
shotgun blast of like, oh, this is everything that films can be.
exactly, correct. I remember watching Godfather for the first time and just being absolutely blown away. You
Yeah,
know, it just is a complete film.
yeah,
Um, and the emotionality behind Shawshank Redemption, you know, it just makes you feel like this whole burst of emotions, and just like it makes me like gives me goosebumps
yeah.
just thinking about it. And then five, probably Princess Mononoke.
Yes.
Yeah, we just watched the IMAX re-release at the Chinese theater. It was incredible.
Oh, I can only imagine. That is a film that just I can't even imagine on a big screen. Any of the Ghibli ones, to be honest, but like that one
Mhm.
especially. Some of the moments in that
Yeah.
film, especially like in the latter half, it's just epic.
The music is just so incredible. Like, just watching it on the small screen before that, it didn't quite hit me the way it did when I was in the theater. You know,
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
Okay, to tie it back to the amazing what you do before we finish, I'm just thinking about the kind of forms of media that you create now. What do you see as the kind of advantages of the kind of storytelling form of like shorter videos, YouTube videos, that kind of content creation versus something like cinema? the Martin Scorsese cinema, versus that? What do you see as the kinds of like advantages that has potentially over cinema?
It's storytelling in the most efficient way possible. Every frame counts. Every second counts. You know,
Yeah.
there's no fluff involved. You're trying to capture someone's attention and connect with someone in 15 seconds or less.
What advice do you have for people to be able to turn what they might want to say into something so short?
It's with experience. You know, when you play around in the edit room, cut something, ask yourself, do I really need this? Cut it out and see how it flows. And there's like a certain rhythm that you'll find to like a 15-second video, 30-second video. There's always like a beginning, middle, end, or cold open. Find the structure that works for you, and find that rhythm that works for you. And then when you watch something and there's fluff in there, you can tell when something's off rhythm. And then it's just developing that over the course of just doing hundreds, thousands of these types of videos, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. What advice do you have for people to kind of, how can they do that, yet also fit in with trends and keep with the kind of flows of things while also maintaining that authenticity?
It's honestly about finding what your voice is. You know, what are you trying to say? What resonates with you? That comes with watching movies, that comes with watching content, what speaks to you, and kind of forming your tastes into that. And then kind of borrowing, referencing, and just creating your own like Tarantino-ish cocktail and
Yeah.
forming your voice and conveying that and putting it into this visual art form.
No, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Stephen.
Thank you so much. This is a ton of fun.
And that was my conversation with Stephen Yee. Thanks again, Steve. A big thing that I found inspirational from our chat was the way everything came back always to storytelling and authenticity. Which probably sounds obvious, I guess, but maybe it's just that cynic in me forgot how important that is in not just films, but in the teeny tiny shorts, inverted commas, content too. And ultimately, remembering that the best way to cut through all this noise of stuff is to actually have something you want to share with an audience. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back in another 2 weeks with a new episode. And until then, look after yourselves.